Hey folks, welcome to this week's edition of Shop Talk. I'm Riley Bowman with ConcealedCarry.com, Director of Training here, and host of the Concealed Carry Podcast. Of course, many of you already knew that already. But welcome. Today's April Fool's, April 1st, 2019. Growing up, my grandfather used to play all kinds of tricks on us grandkids on April Fool's. So I think rather fondly of the day. Hey, real quick, today I'm sporting our new Concealed Carry Alumni t-shirt. You guys should go check it out. Available for sale now in our store. Pretty cool shirt. It's got our logo on there. Concealed Carry Alumni, established 2007, 2A Defenders. Cool little shirt. Of course, it has our ConcealedCarry.com logo on one shoulder and a sweet American flag on the other. Hey, Tris, thanks for joining today and others that are watching. Today, we're actually going to be talking about law of self-defense, and specifically the 5 elements of the law of self-defense. This probably, for some of you, is not something that is totally new. You've probably heard Andrew Branca talk about some of these things. We've talked about it certainly before on the podcast, but I thought we'd do a little shop talk about it, because I know that all the time, every time I talk about law of self-defense, there are other people, there are people that comment all the time to me that this is the first they're hearing some of this stuff. How many people actually understand the law of self-defense, I think, is a pretty small number. I would not even go so far as to say that I even totally understand it. I think I understand it better than most, but it's constantly something that I'm trying to learn more and be more educated about. So actually, we have here available in the warehouse the Law of Self-Defense book, written by attorney Andrew Branca. I know it's backwards. Forgive me. This is the mirrored Facebook thing when I do Facebook Lives. Oh, sweet. I'm glad you got the shirt, Cammie. Anyway, Law of Self-Defense book, available on our store. I'll have a special offer for you we'll talk about here in just a bit. I'm going to walk into the conference room. That's where we're going to do a lot of today's shop talk, is in the meeting room here in our office. So, hey, Ken and Janine and Ryan. Ryan's got to pick up a new copy. Apparently yours got stolen. Hopefully it's like a good stolen, like somebody else really needed that book. And they'll be better because of it, although it's never a good thing to steal, right? Let me get you mounted here in my little cell phone mount. So I've got the whiteboard here, and we'll use this for a lot of what we talk about today. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Again, talking about the 5 elements of self-defense, and specifically using as my text, as this is where I base a lot of my current knowledge on the law of self-defense, is from this book written by attorney Andrew Branca. You can see that the foreword's written by Massad Ayub, one of the foremost experts also on law of self-defense. And so it's a pretty big deal when you have Andrew Branca, who is the expert in law of self-defense. I mean, the guy that other attorneys call when they have questions about law of self-defense. And he got Mas Ayub to write his foreword, because Mas is like the grandfather of law of self-defense, and in writing it in a way, in a way that people actually can understand, layman's terms, right? So this is the 3rd edition. This is actually a special Guardian Nation edition that we shipped out to Guardian Nation members in one of our boxes. We still have a bunch of these, so it's kind of a special edition, and we still have so many of these that we'd love to sell and get rid of more of these. So anyway, law of self-defense. Let's talk about the 5 elements of self-defense. Hey, Tommy, glad you're working, and that's good. That's a good thing. So work away, and you can definitely watch later on. So let's see. Hey, Malcolm from Mississippi, and Mark. Good to have you joining in, Mark, and Scott. I see Scott as well. Good guys. All right. So let's talk about self-defense. Now, I just taught a concealed carry class on Saturday, and I like to ask the question, who here knows what the law of self-defense really means? And it's always surprising to me how many people actually think they understand the law of self-defense. The number of people that actually think they know when they can't use deadly force in defense of themselves or others. So when I start going through this, a lot of times there's some really big, eye-opening moments for people, because it's the first time they've ever heard of these principles or heard it explained in this way. So often when we think of law of self-defense, where people's minds go to first is that they think of, probably the first thing that comes to their mind is stand your ground or something like that. And stand your ground doesn't even explain law of self-defense. It's one little small piece of everything else. Really, actually, it's really just one small little sliver of one of the elements of self-defense. But there's 5 elements. So let's talk about those 5 elements. Andrew is watching. Andrew, if I say anything wrong, and we probably should have just had Andrew drive up to the office here today and have him talk about this for me. That'd probably be a lot easier. Anyway, but we're doing a special promotion this week on the book, Law of Self-Defense, and we've got some other things. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So stick around and stay tuned. But so 5 elements of self-defense. Okay, so let's talk about those. And let's start right off the bat. Where's my marker? So the first thing is that we have to be the innocent party, right? So innocence, right? So if we are actually going to use justified deadly force in defense of ourselves or somebody else, then first off, we have to be the innocent party. What that means in just a nutshell is that we didn't start the fight. I like to think of it as we didn't take the fight to anybody else. And don't think necessarily physical fight. Depending on the state that you're in, depending on what case law might apply to you and your state and your location and your particular circumstances, words alone, in many places don't necessarily create a problem as far as innocence, but they can be a problem depending on where you are. And they certainly can make your case a lot more difficult to defend when you say something that's really crossing a line. When you kind of instigate an argument or some sort of fight because of something you said, like you called somebody's wife, a really dirty name, and it escalated things, then that can make you look less like an innocent party. And depending again on where you are, it might actually create a problem for you in your case for self-defense. So the way, again, I like to think of it is I didn't bring the fight to anybody else. The fight came to me. I was involved in this altercation by no fault or choice of my own. For whatever reason, whether randomly or because of something that I did but I didn't realize I did. Just imagine, I accidentally cut somebody off in traffic, right? And that person follows me home or follows me to the grocery store. And I don't, I'm listening to my favorite tunes on the radio. And I hop out of the truck, and next thing I know, somebody is, pounding on me or whatever. Road rage incident. Not necessarily, maybe I cut them off, but that's not something that would necessarily make me not the innocent party, right? So, because that alone, typically, because that's not what we'd consider an overt act. And most of the times, when we talk about innocence, it is, I did not go up to somebody and start the fight. I didn't start pushing somebody around. I didn't throw the first punch. Those sorts of things. Now, Andrew makes a really great case in his book. He uses the example of talks about a theoretical case where you get into kind of some sort of altercation, and it keeps escalating, and the other person maybe starts shoving you or pushing you, but you're the first person that hits them. And what that person's going to try to say is that, well, he was the first person that threw a punch, right? But the reality is that other person is the one that kind of instigated it and started everything off. Maybe even did the first shove or whatever, or really got up in your face, But you threw the first punch. Sometimes depending on the situation, depending on who says and she says and they say and witnesses and all that stuff. These are all just things to consider. We want to do everything we can, I think, to appear as though we are the innocent party, and to try to, even though it may not necessarily be required, but if we can try to appear or try to avoid a situation or try to de-escalate things, then that's always going to bode well for us in looking like we are, or in actually being the innocent party. Okay, does that make sense? Ron says, I hate getting a phone call during these broadcasts. I hate getting phone calls when I'm trying to do a live thing too. So hopefully I don't get any calls here in the next 30 minutes. Let's let's see. Tiffany says, must have strong judgment. Good judgment. I agree. Like, we need to use good common sense and do everything we can, like I said, to avoid conflict in the first place. Always try to de-escalate things. Use good verbal judo. We should do a shop talk sometime about verbal judo. That's a good one. Even if we don't necessarily have to, by law, avoid a situation, for instance, actually run away or avoid this person that's causing these problems. Even that's not, in many cases, that's not required of you by the law, but it's probably not a bad idea, right? It's common sense. Let's see, I accidentally swiped the comments away. What in the world? My phone's like freaking out on me. There we go. Hey, Bill. All right, so let's talk about the second element of self-defense, okay? And let's talk about proportionality. I think actually Andrew usually talks about all caps, not caps. I think Andrew usually talks about imminence second. Now, I might have gotten those switched around, but this is how it's coming to my mind. Proportionality. So proportionality is a second element of self-defense, and it basically says that I didn't use an unproportional amount of force in responding to this altercation or this fight or this attack or whatever, right? So obviously if somebody was using non-lethal force against me, then I can't respond with lethal force, right? And I can't like go way overboard. Like, let's just suppose that somebody shoves me really hard. Now, while that could be perceived as an attack, as a violent, use of physical force against me, but let's say I come right back and I clobber them with a club or something, well, a club or a baseball bat, that would be potentially lethal weapon, especially depending on how it's used. And it would certainly not be proportional based on that shove that person, gave me. So we have to make sure they're proportional. The easy thing, though, is we are proportional, generally speaking, whenever there's a lethal use of force, like a lethal weapon is involved in particular, then we respond with lethal force, right? So as long as we meet the other elements of self-defense, proportional, then we should have no problems, right? Jacob, how is Riley doing? I need to... Okay, let me see if I can write the next one backwards. How about that, Mark? I forget that I'm backwards on the Facebook Live. So let's try the next one, shall we? So the next one would be Oh, I got to think about how to do an N backwards. Okay. This is really interesting, Mark. Imminence. Did I even spell it right? I have no idea. I think it looks good in the reversed camera there. There you go, Mark. How about that? All right, so surely someone mentioned the video is mirrored and whatever he writes is backwards. Imminence. Okay, imminence means like it's happening right now, right? Like this is an altercation, this is a fight, this is a situation where I need to defend myself, and it's happening in the immediacy, like right now. But there's a really good way of explaining imminence and talking about imminence. And that's called or known as the AOJ triad. J. That way, right? The AOJ triad. I'm going to really try this, guys. Triad. This is really fun. That looks, I should write on the board while I'm watching myself in the camera. It'd probably work a little bit better. So what is AOJ? AOJ is ability, opportunity, and hold on. I got so distracted by trying to do everything backwards. Ability, opportunity, and jeopardy. Okay, so let's talk about those things. I'm going to go backwards. Jeopardy is that's really the piece where your life is in danger because somebody is using deadly force on you, okay, or against you, right? And somebody has jeopardy, like you are in jeopardy because somebody has the ability and the opportunity to do something to you. So I actually like to use an example of a cop friend of mine here in the Denver metro area. He's a police officer, and he once responded to a domestic situation. Upon arriving at the scene, what it was that the call was from a lady, and she said, my son is trying to kill me. He has a sword, and he's trying to kill me with his sword. All right? Upon arriving at the house, the officer learned that, in talking with the woman, this boy had locked himself at that point in his room. He'd holed himself up in his room. He's got a sword, and he basically was screaming all kinds of, obscenities and profanities at his mother. And then he realized the cops are there, and he's screaming at them too. And he's in his bedroom, but the door's locked, and he's saying, "Don't you dare, don't you come in here, leave me alone, get out of here," sort of thing. But he's in there, and he's got a sword, and he had taken some swipes at his mom. So the officer's trying to coax him out of there, and he learns from his mother this kid is actually like 10 years old or 12 years old. He's still a little kid, but he has a deadly weapon, right? At some point, that kid comes out of the bedroom and comes at the police officer, sword raised, ready to strike. My friend said that while he maybe could have drawn a gun and used a gun, because this kid was really intent on harming him. He could tell that his intent was not good. And he had a legitimate, sharp sword that could have posed grave bodily danger, injury, or even death to the officer or to this child's mom, right? So the opportunity was there as far as he had a weapon, and he was right there face to face with this cop with this sword coming at him. But the way the officer looked at it is he didn't feel like this kid, and I guess he technically had the ability to some degree, but this child was so much smaller and weaker than this officer that he really felt that he could step in and take control of this young man. So he truly didn't feel like he was in jeopardy, because he didn't feel like that little boy really posed enough of a threat to the officer that it was worthwhile, stepping up the force level. So does that make sense? That story is always kind of stuck in my mind, that as he explained that he didn't feel like this boy really had the ability to harm him. Okay, now that's kudos to that cop, because of his training level and because he actually takes that training seriously, he felt confident with his hands-on, his hand-to-hand skills, that he could actually step in, grab this boy's arms, and keep him from being able to strike the officer with a sword. And it probably saved that boy's life. And I'll tell you what, the good news of the story is that this boy, I think, was probably able to turn his life around, because it went from being very scary and very potentially deadly to having a really serious talk with this boy and being able to start changing his life, as opposed to hurt him really severely and maybe even change the way he views police officers, and turn it into a more of a positive learning experience sort of thing. So anyway, I like to use that story as an example of talking about ability, opportunity, and jeopardy. All right, so something is imminent if, in the moment, there is a person that has the ability to harm you, an opportunity to do so, and so both those exist, and then they are doing something that actually causes or potentially causes true harm against or towards you. Does that make sense? All right, so LOL, I'll take lost self-defense for $500, Trebek. Let's see. There is not a flip option, Bill. I'm sorry, not on my phone. Maybe that's true on the Androids, but I have tried to find it on the phone, guys. I have looked and looked and looked. I'm on an iPhone, so. Anyway, all right, sorry, just checking in with comments. So hopefully this is making some sense. So ability, opportunity, jeopardy, imminence, happening now, right? Not in 15 minutes or anything like that. So, all right, what's the next thing? I need to rewrite everything, don't I? So we'll go over here. Oh, I didn't write 4 backwards. 4. Here we go. Avoidance. I have to really think about those ends. Avoidance, number 4. All right, so the 4th element of self-defense is that you try to avoid the situation, okay? Now, by law, in a few states, this is a requirement. But, and that could be different based on inside of a home or residence or outside of residence, right? So for most of us, though, chances are, most states, you do not have to retreat or avoid this attack or this situation, okay? So avoidance, this is where stand your ground and castle doctrine come into play, all right? So stand your ground law simply removes a duty to retreat or the duty to avoid a violent attack, a deadly attack on you, all right? So stand your ground says, I don't have to, I have no legal obligation to try to retreat as a first attempt at defending myself, all right? Because that places an undue burden on the innocent party, right? It's not their fault that they're in this situation. And so stand your ground laws and castle doctrine removes the duty to retreat within a home, all right? Now, whether your state is a true, and actually Utah just passed law last week that turned them from a soft stand your ground state into a hard stand your ground state where they have a much stronger stand your ground law now. But you're the innocent party, right? To say to a person that you have a legal obligation to try to avoid this attack, to me seems crazy, right? We didn't choose to be in that situation. And if a prosecutor could show, well, he didn't try to avoid that enough, that's where it starts getting really sticky. So most of you and most of us are in states where we do not have to worry as much about this fourth element of self-defense. But you should know what your state laws are, all right? And you can refer to, guess what? Law of self-defense, which has in the back here, there's all kinds of really great tables. Let's see. This is use of deadly force in defense of property by state. Let's zip forward here a little bit. Use of non-deadly force, justifiable use of force, laws on duty to retreat. See, so there's all these great tables in the back of Andrew's book. All right. So let's just look at South Dakota, for instance. General duty of non-aggressor to retreat before use of force in self-defense. No. Tennessee, no. Texas, no. Utah, no. But then you get to like Vermont, and this one's kind of interesting, guys. General duty of non-aggressor to retreat before use of force in self-defense. In Vermont, no, if the use of deadly force was immediately necessary to defend against imminent threat of death or bodily injury. All right? Virginia, no, unless defendant made a contribution to the affray. All right, you see, so sometimes there might be like little tiny minor sticking points. Let's see if we can find one that actually, let's see, is a little bit more. Here we go, Massachusetts, and this is the one I was thinking of. Do you have a duty to retreat before use of force in self-defense in Massachusetts? Before using any force. And someone's asking about what about California? California actually has pretty decent self-defense law, guys. We trash on California all the time, especially where it comes to magazine capacities and assault weapons and registration and all this stuff. But actually, their self-defense law is not that bad because there is no duty to retreat in California. So that's pretty cool, right? All right, so that's avoidance. Let's talk about the fifth thing. Here we go. 5. This is a lot of fun. Let's see. The fifth thing is, what am I missing here? Reasonableness. It's like there's something that kind of encompasses everything. Reasonable. Am I doing okay? This is a long one. Reasonableness. That feels really awkward. Okay, reasonableness. It looks okay on the screen. All right, so reasonableness. What is this? It's like the overarching thing that we look at almost all cases, right? Especially self-defense cases. And if you look at states like Colorado, for instance, I could speak to really well because I'm pretty familiar with the verbiage of statute in Colorado. You see the word reasonable used all the time. Things like, the person had, the actor, for instance, the person that's in the situation that we're trying to determine, whether they were justified or not, had a reasonable belief, right? That there was an imminent threat, right? You see that reasonable word thrown out all the time. And it really means kind of what you probably think it means. But you have to understand, though, that we aren't the ultimate judge of what reasonable is. Generally, a jury is the judge. They're the ones ruling on a case potentially, right, as to whether our actions were reasonable. So it's not just what I think is reasonable all the time, but I need to make sure that my mindset and everything is generally in line with where I think my peers would be, okay? But in all these situations, dealing with my innocence, my proportionality, that's a big one, especially for reasonable. Like, just imagine that we actually are in a fight and I'm the innocent party and I'm defending myself, but not necessarily with a weapon, but I'm defending myself reasonably considering circumstances. Let's say somebody's trying to hit me, they're kicking me, they're trying to take me down to the ground, so I'm fighting back. And that's a reasonable use of non-deadly force to defend myself. But let's suppose I get the upper hand, but then I continue to pound this guy into the ground, right? And I don't let up. I don't stop when I should stop. That would be unreasonable, right? And perhaps even not proportional at that point anymore, because that person, maybe I beat them to the bloody pulp, or I knocked them out when I took them to the ground, but I continue to beat on them. Well, they're no longer a threat to me, so that's neither proportional and especially is not reasonable, okay? In my evaluation, I kind of talked about this a little bit. I touched on it, that story of my cop friend as he defended himself against this young boy with a sword. He didn't think it would be reasonable for him to use deadly force against this little boy because he thought that would be perceived as not reasonable, okay? So reasonableness is something it kind of overarches everything else, and we have to always keep it in mind and make sure our actions would be construed as being reasonable, all right? The concept, Bill, of regaining innocence is complicated, and it is, and it especially depends on various state statutes. It changes a lot of times from state to state. So Andrew says, so far everything he's hearing is okay. I haven't crossed any major lines here. I should have began this shop talk today by saying, I am not an attorney, and anything you hear today should not be construed as legal advice. And hire a good attorney. And Andrew, by the way, is not hireable for your typical case. Well, he is hireable, but he's not a practicing self-defense or criminal defense attorney. But he writes the books and he presents the information in a really great format that's easy to understand. And you guys should go check out his stuff. All right, Jacob. I know Jacob's watching. I forgot already the exact details and the link and everything I'm supposed to use, so you need to post here right now in the comments section what the special offer is this week. I got so fired up over writing backwards and stuff that I forgot. So, guys, any questions about any of this? Yeah, Andrew, yeah, you got that. Yeah, and Andrew is very careful to say that even when he's talking about this stuff, he says, this is not legal advice. I am not your attorney. I'm not representing you. I'm not telling you what to do, just presenting the law to you in the way that Andrew sees it and understands it. And I'm doing the same here, trying to explain it as best as I understand it. All right. Every situation, every case is a little bit different. There's some overarching kind of guiding principles that we generally can follow, right? But at the end of the day, I have to think about where I'm at personally and with my mindset. And my mindset is this. I'm very focused on protecting and defending life. And where there are true threats against life, myself, my wife, my kids, my neighbor, but in the neighbor situations, we got to be careful about involving ourselves in third-party situations. So I've got to really have a really good reason and a true belief that that person is in danger. But that's where my mindset is. I'm not going to be all worried about, well, what can I do as it relates to defending my animals, for instance, on my property, or defending my property, being concerned about curtilage and all these other things. They're all good things to understand. But at the end of the day, I'm focused on protecting and defending life. All right? I'm not worried or concerned about property. That's why I have insurance. I have insurance that protects my property. Yes, things may get broken. Things may get stolen. I may incur some financial burden because of something somebody else did to me. But at the end of the day, I want to make it home safely and in one piece, and not having to worry about defending myself in a courtroom, because I crossed a line somewhere as it relates to how I use deadly force. I'll tell you guys a quick story that happened just on Friday here in southern Colorado. Two guys were approached by their neighbor. Their neighbor said that someone had just robbed them or attempted to rob them. Gave a brief description of the vehicle. And those two guys, these two neighbors, they decided to hop in their vehicle and take off and go looking for this supposed thief. A few blocks away, they found the vehicle that they believed was the person that had attempted to commit this crime. They shot at that person in their vehicle. The unfortunate side of this whole situation is that the person they shot was simply a mail carrier. Right? Nobody that was a threat to anybody. These guys went out of their way. They felt like, I think they were trying to help their neighbor, but they went out of their way to chase down this person they believed, and then shot at them, thinking this person was they thought this person was a threat, apparently. As far as I could tell from the stories that I read, there was no action or threat or anything that the mail carrier might have done that might have been misconstrued as a threat towards these guys. But they tracked him down, and because of what their neighbor told them, they thought this guy was a threat, so they fired at him, apparently, and struck this mail carrier. They're going to jail, I'm pretty sure, for a long time. Because there was very little in what they did that would be, at the very least, considered reasonable. We have to look at imminence. There was no imminent threat against them. And because that mail carrier was the true innocent party, these guys will not be perceived as being innocent. That's for sure. And Bill is exactly right. Those people hurt our cause. All right, so anyway, that's a crazy story, Eric. So that's why I think we have to use our brains. We have to think about, okay, I'm concerned about protecting and defending life, not necessarily property. So what? My neighbor came over and said, even if this person that just robbed him used a weapon in the commission of that crime is done and over with. Why am I chasing after them now? It's not my job to chase after them. It's not my job to try to recover property. Okay? Now, regardless of what your state says about property law and about use of force in defending property, or even sometimes in remote situations, Texas is kind of a weird one, in retrieving or recovering property, that should not be our concern. Our concern as it relates to carrying this gun, and yes, I've got my cool fire in there, do a little dry fire today. The concern that I should have, or the thing I should be only concerned about with carrying that gun or potentially using that gun, is in defending and protecting life. All right, so I know that I saw some things. Go, guys, oh yeah, that's so simple to remember. concealedcarry.com/April Fools. We have a special offer for you guys. You can buy Andrew's book, and you can get it free if you spend $70. So just go to our website and spend $70, and you'll get a copy of Andrew Branca's Law of Self-Defense book free. We'll just throw it in the package. Boom, on its way. Merry Christmas, April Fools, you guys. This is no April Fool's joke, by the way, as far as the special deal and offer we have today. And the more you spend, the more free stuff you'll get. All right, so you can see all the details at concealedcarry.com/April Fools. Let's see. How about bouncing the camera shot off a mirror? Yeah, I don't know. Just deal with the fact that it's backwards, guys. Or maybe watch it in the mirror. There you go. That's the solution, Jerry, and everybody else complaining about it being backwards. You just need to watch my videos in a mirror. How about that? I like that solution. That's way easier. They don't have to haul a mirror around with me everywhere I go. If I flip the camera around and use the back-facing camera, it wouldn't be reversed. But then I wouldn't be able to see your comments. So that would be unfortunate. So I like this comment from Ray. That is a place to think, is this action worth the possibility of going to jail for the rest of life or possibility of death? And you know what? That's a really great thing to consider. It shouldn't even just be, is there a possibility that my actions that I'm doing right now might lead me to going to jail because I crossed some line somewhere? It should also be a consideration, is it worth trying to protect and defend property or animals or stuff, my vehicle? Is it worth my life to try to defend or protect that from being taken from me or from my neighbor? And I would argue, not in my world. There's no stuff that I own that is worth my life. All right, so that's a really great comment and a really great thing to to keep in mind. All right, guys, so make sure you're out there getting good dry fire practice. All right, take the opportunity to grab a cert gun, grab a cool fire trainer, grab even just your live gun, but make it safe and do it in a safe place, and get some dry fire practice in today. And do that a couple times this week. It makes a big difference for you guys. And then also make sure that you're learning and studying about and understanding the law of self-defense. Don't forget, take advantage of our April Fool's deal today, concealedcarry.com/April Fools. Get the book free just for ordering $70 worth of stuff. And that's a heck of a deal because the book alone, I think, is a $25 book. So you can get a $25 book for free just by ordering other great products, including training ones. Maybe today's the day that you go out and pick up a cert pistol. How about that, huh? You pick this up, automatically you're going to get one of these for free. And we already have one of the best prices on cert pistols anywhere. I don't know if you realize that or not. The MSRP on this guy is like $250. We sell them for quite a bit under that, all right? Ryan says, can't dry fire. You're in California for the week. That's too bad, buddy. Maybe next time take a cert with you or something. Eric used his barrel block today. Good work, buddy. Mark's got his cert and Laser X. That's awesome, dude. Good stuff. So yeah, get to work, guys. Remember, be safe, understand the law, be responsible, be reasonable. Dry fire practice like your life depends on it, because it does. And go to concealedcarry.com/April Fools. Take advantage of our April Fools deals today. That's all I got. So, folks, we'll see you next week on Shop Talk. Same time, same place. And Ken, how long have you been on, Ken? Law of Self-Defense. That's the book. Law of Self-Defense. Special Guardian Nation edition. All right. These were only available for Guardian Nation members, but we still have a whole bunch sitting around. So we'll let you have a special GN edition. So that's all I got. We'll see you next week. This week on the podcast, tomorrow we've got Justified Saves coming up. We'll have a whole bunch of Justified Save stories to share. And on Thursday, we're actually going to have a special guest on the podcast. I'm pretty sure I got this confirmed. So it's possible. It's always possible things change. But it's looking like this Thursday we're going to have on the podcast, his name is Sean Burrows. He's a professional shooter for HK. All right, he's a professional sponsored shooter by HK. And he's got some really great ideas to talk about. Here's what I like about Sean. He's also an instructor, and he's passionate about self-defense as well. So he's not just one of those, nothing against the people I'm about to describe, but he's not just one of those competitive shooters that's all they do, and they're just really good at shooting really fast. Sean is also very smart and a really sharp guy where it comes to self-defense stuff, defensive handgun use. He's a heck of a competitive shooter, but he also teaches concealed carry courses and stuff like that. So we're going to have Sean on the podcast on Thursday. So don't miss it. I'm pretty sure you guys will enjoy. All right, guys, we'll let you go. Have a great week, and happy April Fools.